I'm glad that you joined in this watercolor painting demo of a winter landscape. The sketch needed for this painting is given in this video, and the link to the sketch is given in the description from where you can download the image. I'm beginning with wet on dry technique, and I'm using yellow ochre to paint the sky. I'm using a very light value of yellow ochre to paint the sky. When the sky area is still wet, I'm going to paint distant trees. I blended permanent orange with ultramarine for a brown shade, and then I mix it with olive green to paint the evergreen trees. When the paint on the tree areas is still wet, I'm going to sprinkle some salt over them. Do you know the moisture in the air affects the salt technique in watercolor? In high humidity, the salt technique may not work effectively. The excess moisture in the air affects the absorption of salt into the paint, leading to a result that is not as prominent as expected. This is the result of salt technique in high humidity. Acceptance is a crucial lesson in both watercolor painting and in life. Accepting and surrendering to a result help us to move forward to the next step. I desaturated ultramarine by mixing it with a touch of permanent orange and used it to paint the dark snowy area near the body of water. Then, using the medium value of desaturated ultramarine, I paint the shadow areas of the snow. You can see I applied ultramarine only on certain areas, and using a damp brush, I smoothing the edges. There is no need of perfect blending in this step because my aim is to create a puffy, snowy land. Next, I'm going to paint the lake using wet on wet technique. After wetting all the areas around the swan, I begin painting the lake using yellow ochre. Following that, I'm using desaturated ultramarine to paint the water closer to the viewer. Follow the brush strokes as in the video to create a sense of movement in the water. Paint a light value of desaturated ultramarine for the water near the snow. Create a couple of ripples around the swan using desaturated ultramarine. Next, we are going to paint the reflection of trees on the water. For that, I'm using the same pigment which I used to paint the trees. That is, it is a mix of permanent orange, ultramarine, and olive green. Use a large mop brush while painting with wet on wet technique because it covers a large area in no time before the paper starts to dry. Also, a mop brush holds a lot of pigment, so you don't have to dip into paint frequently. After painting the lake, allow the paper to dry completely and then move to the next step. While using my large mop brush, sometimes I paint into my main subject. I don't worry much about it because I can use lifting technique. In the lifting technique, I wash the brush in clean water, make it damp with a cloth, and then use the damp brush to lift pigment from its place. Next, I'm painting the reflection of swan in the water. For that, I'm using the same pigment that I used to paint the evergreen trees. Use dark value of the pigment, which is a mix of ultramarine, permanent orange, and olive green. While painting the reflection, you have to leave some spaces to show the movement of water. You can see I'm just adding streaks of lines to create the reflection of swan in the water. For the reflection of evergreen trees on water, I use the medium value of the pigment, which is a mix of ultramarine, permanent orange, and olive green. For the reflection of swan, I'm using the same pigment, but I'm using dark value of it. The last step is to paint the main subject, that is the swan. For the head and neck portion, I use the lightest value of the pigment that I used to paint the evergreen trees. Next, I'm using the lightest value of desaturated ultramarine to paint the shadow near the feathers of the swan. Use a light value of pigment while painting inside the swan to preserve its whiteness. Next, the important part of swan is its beak. Here I'm using permanent orange and then I'm using indigo to paint near the beak. I place a medium value under the neck to show there is a shadow. We reached the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. See you in another video. Until then, take care and bye bye from Prema.